Hello, this is Jim with We Develop Electrical Products. Today, this is our fifth project with the Arduino Uno, and it's going to be an extension of our fourth project, which our fourth project I've got shown here on how we wired that up. And I'll have down in the description a link to that fourth project video, so you can review that if you need to. Basically, what we did is we had a potentiometer, and we connected 5 volts up to one pin and 0 volts to the lower pin. And then out of the center pin, we ran a line to the Arduino Uno analog input, A0. And as we rotated the shaft of the potentiometer, the voltage would vary coming out of that center pin, and we could read that through A0, and we could display the decimal value of that. So if I were to look at this now, I've got the board all hooked up, and I've got the sketch that we had written back then, which we have it basically we're calling a serial begin 9600. If you remember, what that does is sets the baud rate of writing to our display. And we have an integer value down here in the loop that we defined as sensor value, and we're setting that equal to the analog read of A0 pin. And then we drop down here and we do a serial print line of the sensor value. And then we delay for 1 millisecond, go back up the loop and do it all over again. So if I were to program this now with the original script, it's compiling, uploading, and it's done uploading. So now if I go into our serial monitor and take a look at what we're getting out, we're getting out a decimal representation of a voltage. It says 423. Now if I rotate the shaft on this potentiometer, it goes as high as 1023 and as low as 0. So it goes 1023 to 0. Now where does that 0 come from? Well, that's ground potential. So that's the output of the digital to analog converters at that. Now, how do we know it's a digital analog converter? Well, you can go to the website for Arduino, and you can pull up the schematic of the Arduino board. And we're connected down here to A0, down here at pin 23. And it says it's going to ADC. And what does ADC mean? Analog to digital converter. That's the acronym for it. So now, where does the 1023 come from in the analog to digital converter? If we look at the chip that's on the Arduino Uno, it is an Atmega 328 chip. And if we go to the section on analog to digital converter, it says it has 10-bit resolution. So the analog is read in and a digital representation comes out, and it's 10-bit resolution in the digital. So you can go to a binary to decimal converter on the web and set it to go from binary to decimal and type in 10 ones, because it's going to have 10 bits of resolution coming out of that analog to digital converter. And that comes out with a decimal number of 1023. So that's where the 1023 comes from. So it goes from 0 to 1023, and we want that to read, instead of 0 to 1023, we want that to read 0 to 5, because we want it to read from 0 to 5 volts. So we want to scale that. So in order to scale it from 0 to 5 volts instead of 0 to 1023, you go down here, and after we read the sensor value, or do an analog read of that A0, we want to scale it. And we're going to scale it with a float value. So this a float means that it's going to have decimal points after the whole number. An integer is just a whole number. A float has decimal points after the whole number. And we're going to call this voltage. And we're going to set that equal to our sensor value, the initial value we had, the analog read, and then we're going to scale it. We're going to multiply it times a scale factor. And that scale factor is going to be the high end that we want it to be, which is 5, and we're going to make it a float, so it's 5.0. And we're going to divide that by the number of resolutions we've got, which is 1023. 10.0, because it's a float. And then close the parentheses and a semicolon to end that. So now the voltage that we defined here would be scaled, a scale factor of that sensor value that we read from A0. And now all we have to do is go down here to what we print out. We don't want to print out sensor value anymore, because that would still be 0 to 1023, because that's just strictly an analog read of A0. So now what we want to do is change this from sensor value to our scaled value, voltage. So that's what we want to print out. And if I were to download that now, it's compiling, uploading, and it's done. So now if I go to the serial monitor, it's printing out 5.00. That's the reason for the float, because we have 2 decimal points after the whole number. And we can crank it down, and we've got precision out to the 100th place. And it goes from 0 volts to 5 volts. So now we've created a voltmeter, and it's been scaled properly. So now you know how to scale it, the output of a digital analog converter. So if you liked this video, I hope you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the video. I'd appreciate it. And hit that bell next to the subscribe, and you'll be notified when I come out with new videos. So have a good day and enjoy the Arduino.